Hi everybody, and welcome to Movie Recaps with Brit. Today, we will be taking a look at a movie titled Let Him Go. Without further ado, let's get started. In 1961, in Montana, George Blackledge, a retired sheriff, resides on a ranch with his spouse Margaret, their grown-up son James, along with James's wife Lorna and their infant son Jimmy. One day, Margaret observes James's horse roaming without him, raising concerns. George rides his horse into the forest and discovers James's lifeless body near the stream, having suffered a fatal neck injury from falling off the horse. Subsequently, George silently transports his son's remains back home. Several years later, George and Margaret attend the wedding of Lorna and her new spouse, Donnie Weboy. The Blackledges assist the newlyweds in settling into their new dwelling. It becomes evident that Lorna doesn't harbor deep affection for Donnie and primarily seeks support for herself and Jimmy. Margaret feels a greater pang of emptiness due to Jimmy's absence, signifying that their son's final connection to them has also vanished. While shopping, Margaret spots Lorna, Jimmy, and Donnie enjoying ice cream together. Jimmy accidentally drops his ice cream, and when Donnie tries to offer his, Jimmy refuses. In response, Donnie forcefully grabs Jimmy's arm, and when Lorna intervenes, Donnie strikes her. Later, Margaret visits Lorna and Jimmy's apartment, but a neighboring tenant informs her that the three of them have departed for Donnie's family's unknown location. Determined to rescue Jimmy, Margaret prepares her belongings, prompting George, who reluctantly accompanies her. On their way, they pass by James's grave to pay their respects. George and Margaret inquire with locals about the whereabouts of the Weboys. Later, Margaret surprises George by bringing his gun along, as she believes it may be necessary when confronting Donnie and his family. They then consult a sheriff who provides them with a lead in North Dakota. They then converse with another shop proprietor who has a connection to the Weboys, and the individual advises them to search in Gladstone. During their journey, the Blackledges encounter a young Native American man named Peter Dragswolf, residing nearby. They notice him inspecting their car, but he assures them that he has no intention of stealing from them. Peter offers them food and shelter for the evening, and even directs them to seek out Donnie's uncle, known as Bill. The next morning, George and Margaret travel and meet Bill. They inform him of their desire to see their grandson exclusively. Bill communicates with his sister-in-law and Donnie's mother, Blanche, who expresses interest in meeting the Blackledges. Bill leads them to Blanche's residence, where she resides with her other two sons, Marvin and Elton. Blanche initially presents herself as pleasant and lovely, sharing anecdotes about her time in Gladstone and a glimpse into her personal history, including a story about her deceased spouse. Following dinner, Donnie arrives with Lorna and Jimmy. When Margaret holds Jimmy and prepares to leave, Blanche's true nature begins to emerge. She addresses Lorna and Jimmy firmly, commanding Lorna to put Jimmy to bed. George and Margaret have no alternative but to depart. The subsequent day, George and Margaret locate Lorna at her workplace and take her out for lunch. They emphasize the importance of Lorna and Jimmy returning with them to escape from the Weboys, given Lorna's evident fear of them. However, Lorna worries about the consequences of attempting to leave, aware that Blanche will not permit Donnie to separate from her again. Nevertheless, she eventually becomes persuaded and devises a plan to sneak out later at night while the Weboys are asleep. During that night, the Weboys assault the Blackledges in their hotel room. While Blanche berates them regarding an incident at Lorna's workplace, Margaret reveals that Donnie had struck Lorna and Jimmy. Blanche questions Donnie about the truth, even resorting to slapping him, and then turns to Margaret to inquire about the severity of the assault. When she commands Donnie to hit Margaret, George forcefully intervenes, bypassing Marvin and Elton to retrieve his gun and aim it at them, preventing Donnie from approaching Margaret. The men then overpower him, and Blanche commands Donnie to sever his fingers with a hatchet, which he complies with. Subsequently, they depart, and Margaret escorts George to the hospital. A local officer visits the Blackledges at the hospital and relays that he spoke with the Weboys, who twisted the narrative to portray George as the initial aggressor, and accuse him and Margaret of planning to abduct Lorna and Jimmy. Clearly biased towards the Weboys, the officer offers no assistance to the Blackledges and informs them that Jimmy now belongs to the Weboy family. Defeated, George and Margaret commence their journey back to Montana. However, George's frailty impedes their progress, compelling them to seek refuge at Peter's residence once again. Margaret converses with Peter outdoors, and he recounts the tragic episode of men raiding his village, forcibly separating children from their families and attempting to erase their Native American heritage. Upon his return to his grandmother, they encountered a language barrier that hindered their understanding. Margaret approaches George with the idea of finding a place nearby to remain close to Lorna and Jimmy. However, George has reached his breaking point and wishes to surrender. Overwhelmed, Margaret expresses her sorrow, feeling as though they have lost James once again. George takes Margaret's words to heart and comprehends what he must do. Under the cover of darkness, he covertly retrieves a shotgun and returns to the Weboy residence. He ignites a fire outside the house and proceeds to Donnie and Lorna's room, compelling Donnie to submit at gunpoint. Lorna promptly seizes the opportunity to flee outdoors. Meanwhile, Margaret notices George's absence and hurries with Peter to locate him. Although George engages in a struggle with Bill, who attempts to raise the alarm, Bill still manages to ensnare Lorna and clutches Jimmy. Blanche awakens just as George combats Bill, leading to Lorna's unfortunate fall down the stairs. Blanche directs her pistol towards George while he retrieves Jimmy. However, she inadvertently shoots Bill in the face, causing his demise. George then tosses Jimmy over the balcony to Lorna, who catches him securely. Meanwhile, Blanche fires a gunshot at George's chest, but he summons enough strength to engage in a struggle with her for the weapon. As Marvin and Elton rush upstairs, George manages to control Blanche's hand into shooting both of them, resulting in their demise. Outside, Margaret and Peter locate Lorna and Jimmy, who are about to flee. Margaret swiftly enters the premises in an attempt to rescue George. Unfortunately, Blanche corners them and shoots George once more, ending his life. In a decisive moment, Margaret seizes the shotgun, while Blanche rants and tells her to go to hell. Ironically, Margaret responds by shooting Blanche, ultimately killing her as the house is engulfed in fire. Margaret attempts to rouse George, but he has passed away. Peter escorts her away as the Weboys' residence becomes engulfed in fire. As morning arrives, Margaret bids farewell to Peter and drives home with Lorna and Jimmy. While she grieves for the loss of George, she finds solace in looking at Jimmy, knowing that he is at least out of harm's way. Thank you for watching our movie recap. While it may seem simple, it actually took a lot of hard work and dedication to produce. If you enjoyed the video, we kindly ask you to show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. By doing so, you'll stay updated on our latest content and help us continue creating more in-depth analyses and critiques of the movies you love. Thank you again for your support.